Hey everybody, it's Ham the Guinness Gamer here. Today I'm going to be bringing you the first in a series of Civilization 6 videos for the absolute beginner. So this is for people that have never played a Civ game before and it's brand new to them but are looking to delve into the Civ 6 world. So first thing I'd recommend you do is start a game. It's always going to be a good start. So to do that, there's many different ways. You can create a game, but there's far too many settings. If you go into that setting, you'll just get completely lost by what you do. All the information that's in it. I will go over setting up your own game at some point in the future, and I'll go through all of the different options that you have. Reason why I'm not doing it now is because you won't understand any of them if you haven't played the game before. So what I'd say, just go to single player and hit play now. What this will do is it'll automatically create a default game with I think it's 8 or 10 civs. It'll give you a random civilization. Who have I got? I've got Ludwig the Second, who I will admit I've never played before, but that doesn't matter. All this is I'm going to be showing you the basics of the game, how the map is laid out, resources and production, and creating a city and spending your first turn in the game, which is very important. So, without further ado, let's go. First thing you'll notice on the map is you start with 2 units. If you've clicked the play now, like I said, it'll start up with the default difficulty level. If you're playing in a lower difficulty level, sometimes you start with more than 2 units, but for now I'll assume your screen looks pretty similar to my own. Different map, different civilization, but everything else should be the same. First unit you have selected here automatically is the settler. What this guy does is he settles cities. Simple as that. It's the only thing he does. He's non-combatant, so he's not a military unit. If other military units, like a warrior here, this is our warrior, but if an enemy warrior came along and attacked him, they would just take him. He wouldn't fight back. So this guy has one job, and it's a very important job, but when you create settlers later on in the game, you're going to need to keep these guys protected with your military units. For now, there's no enemies around us, because that would be a real shitty way to start a game. So, this guy, to create a city, all you have to do is select him and click this Find City button down here in the right hand corner. Now, where you select it is important. Where you decide to put it, often the computer will give you a wee recommended place. That's what this wee city icon here is. It's recommending we build here. Often it will spawn your settler in at that location. Now, I'm going to go ahead and I would recommend that you do is follow the recommended city placement and build there, because generally it will place it in one of the best places. There are occasions where you might change it, but we're not at that stage yet, so we'll just leave it. One thing to note about settling a city, you should generally settle beside a river. What the river does is it provides fresh water to the city, and that will help with the city's growth. Now, some terms in that may not be familiar to you, but we'll discuss growth and population shortly. When this city is placed, it'll come up with a name. Again, you'll not be playing the same civilization as me, so you'll not have founded Munich, but you'll have founded your capital city for whoever you are playing as. This is the city bar. This holds important information for the city. This far left icon means it's your capital, so all your cities after this that you place won't have that icon, but your first one will. This wee icon here is showing the loyalty of the city, which I will discuss in greater detail later as well, but your capital will start with full loyalty, and as I say, we'll discuss that in greater detail in the future. One of the more important things is that you need to know pretty early on is population, is this button here. So you start with one population, that's what the V1 means. That can grow, generally it'll grow up to, can grow up to really 30 I think is the max, but often your cities won't even reach that. What controls your population and how quickly it grows is your food in the city, your food output in the city, and the more surplus food that you have, the quicker this will grow. Now, the wee 8 up in the right hand corner means 8 turns until growth, as you can see here once I mouse over it. The more food you have, the more surplus food you have, as I say, the quicker it grows, so the lower that number would be. But right now, based on the food output of the city, it'll take me 8 turns to get from 1 population up to 2 population. The last thing then, on the right hand side, is the production of the city. It says here nothing currently being produced, and that is because we have to select that in the city. Now, to select that, all you have to do is click anywhere on well, you can click the wee cog and that'll bring up the production here, or you can click anywhere on the actual city bar and that will bring up this previous window that it showed that I could have up there. But that one there, yep. So what should we produce? First of all, I'd recommend producing a scout. There's not that many options here, but as you get through the game, you get more units, access to more units, you get access to a whole lot more buildings than this. But right now I would suggest you just go for a scout, and a scout does exactly what it says on the tin. You'll produce a scout and he will scout out the surrounding area, surprisingly enough. So he'll explore for you all this part of the map. The only part of the map that we have explored is these, I don't know, about 20 or so tiles here that we can see. What I will do while that scout's being produced, you can send this one more here that you have out to explore a wee bit. Now, I wouldn't send them too far from your city. I'm probably going to send them in a wee circle around here just to explore this area that's close to my city, and ultimately I'll bring him back into Munich. And that is because he can help defend the city against enemies. Generally, early on the game, the only enemies you'll come across are called barbarians, and they're AI, they're computer controlled units, and they just run around rampaging and pillaging as barbarians tend to do. So need to keep that warrior close to Munich. The last thing in this turn you'll need to do is choose a research. Now down here, this is your end turn button down in the right hand corner. This often gives you prompts for things that need done, things that haven't been done yet. So when I click on this, it's going to bring me to the choose research screen. Equally, I could actually just click up here because this is your research button up here, and this is generally always here. So you can click on that and it'll bring up the same screen. Now, before choosing the research, I'm going to have to discuss the map a little bit with you and what little bits of the map we have explored until the scout is made. Now, these are tiles. Every city is our hexagonal, 6 sides, aren't they? Hexagonal tiles, and that's how the map is split up. Every part of the map is split like that. Every single tile has a resource output. Now, if you haven't played this game, your resources may not be being shown. So to make your city look the same as mine, if you go down here in the left hand corner and pick lenses, not lenses, map options. Yeah, map options, show resource icons, which is these resources, and you can see them disappear, and then also show yield icons. So for me, I think you should have both of these on at all times because it's very handy. Helps with reading the map. Now it does look a bit prettier without them on, I will admit that, but it's very important for playing the game. So what these yield icons show, so these ones, is the yield of each tile. Now each tile can have food, or it can have production, it can have a number of other things that aren't really shown on this part of the map yet. The main ones are food and production. So if you look at this here, this wheat tile, it has 2 wee bananas and 1 wee cog. So the 2 bananas mean that tile has 2 food, and the cog means that has 1 production, and if you mouse over it'll tell you that. This one down here, 3 cogs, 1, well, I'm calling them bananas, they're definitely not bananas. What are the corn in the cob? Look like corn. So yeah, 1 corn, 3 production. So 1 food, 3 production. Again, any of these you can mouse over, and you can, well, you don't even have to mouse over them, you can see what they are. Now there's other different kinds of resource icons, like this one here, the purple one is culture, which I'll discuss in greater detail later. But right now that's all I think that's about here. There's a couple others as well. There's faith, which is the religious mechanic in Civ, and there's gold as well. But I'll point them out when we discover land that shows them later on. Now what each of these tiles mean, okay, is that if your city works these tiles, so say it works this tile with the cattle on it, it gets 3 food. And what that means, tying in with the growth mechanic that I mentioned earlier, is if you're working that tile, you get 3 extra food, and this means that your city will actually grow quicker if you're going for food. Now, the amount of tiles you can work at one time is dictated to by your population. So right now we have 1 population, and if you click in on this city, it will give you an overview. So right now it's showing only these tiles, and that's because they are the only tiles that are within the border of the city. Now, this border grows as your city grows. It's linked into the culture output of the city, which again, I will get into culture in depth later on. But essentially, you won't only ever have access to these 6 tiles. In fact, your capital generally grows to the maximum size, which is 3 tiles out in all direction. So 1, 2, 3, so they're the whole way around. Generally, your capital, but if your capital starts in a really terrible place, it may not grow to that size. But right now, we probably want to grow our city to the maximum to work out which tiles your city is actually working, or to choose which tile you want your city to work. Again, with 1 population, so we can only work 1 tile. If you go down here to the bottom right hand corner and click Manage Citizens, this opens up, well, an overlay that's showing what citizen is working. Now, right now, 1 citizen, as I say, there's always 1 citizen in the capital. This tile is always worked. So that's like number 0 citizen, if you like. But this is your 1 citizen. Once we get up to 2 citizens, there'll be 2, etc. So what I like to do, I like to grow the city as quickly as possible. We're not in a major rush for producing the scout. Now, the scout that we've said to produce, obviously, it's controlled by these cogs, by the amount of cogs you have. So if I'm going to switch right now, if you look at this, it's taken 1 population, but both we're 8 turns away from increasing the population in growth, and we're also 8 turns away from producing the scout. If we change this now, instead of that citizen being worked, it's this citizen being worked, and then I'll have to refresh this, I believe. In theory, this should have changed the turns that it takes for those things to produce. Now, I would not change. Scout production. Yeah, well, it has. Because he's now saying 10, it just hasn't changed here yet. Might be a bit of a wee glitch in Civ. But now, if you look at this scout was taking 8 turns, but it's now taking 10 turns if you look up in the right hand corner. But equally, where it was taking 8 turns to grow, it should now be taking around 6 turns. I'm just trying to get this to refresh, so it will actually show that on the screen. Nope, it's not going to play ball for me. But it will refresh once we hit next turn. May also refresh once we choose the research. But essentially, we've changed that citizen, so now the city is working more on food than it is on production. So it'll increase its growth and decrease its production. So it slows down the production of the scout, as I say, and increases, how quickly you'll get up a population. But what it will do, once you get up a population, so say it's 6 turns away now, might be 5, we'll see once it refreshes, but once you get up to 2 population, then all of a sudden you have another wee man to place somewhere around here. So again, you could go focus on growth again and put him here, or maybe you want the scout a bit quicker, so you put him here. Ultimately, you want, if the city grows more, then the more citizens you get working, and therefore the ultimately you end up with more production because you've got more tiles anyway. So you always should be focusing on growth early on to get your city up and going. Now, I've discussed that. Now we'll discuss the research. Well, not yet actually. We'll talk about strategic resources and luxury resources. So these things here is amber, spices, cattle, wheat. These are different. These are special resources that are on some tiles throughout the map. As you look at your map, there should be a good number around your capital. The game's always nice and generous that way, and you start with plenty around your capital. What these mean is these resources can be upgraded. You can build something on them. So for instance, this is a wheat resource, you can build a farm on it, or cattle, you can build a pasture on it. And what that'll do is that'll increase the yield of the tile, and it'll increase it by a good chunk depending on what you're building, but it'll increase food, it'll increase production. And ultimately once you improve them, they're the tiles that you're obviously going to be working with your citizens in your city. So they're the tiles that, as I say, you'll be focusing on. Now, the reason why this ties into your research is some of these you need certain research to be able to upgrade. So if you look at this cattle one, for instance, it says here it requires animal husbandry. And if you look at your research over here, animal husbandry is one of the researches that we can go for. And because of this, that's the reason why I'm going to go for this one. Again, stone requires mining, so we have mining here as well. I'm going to go for animal husbandry first. The reason for that is that animal husbandry also unlocks horses. So there are some resources on the map that right now we can't see. Horses is one of them. There's lots of resources later on, like oil and uranium and stuff like that you haven't discovered, in 4000 BC. But you'll unlock research and it'll reveal them on the map, and only then can you harvest them, only then can you use them. Horses is the first example of that. So I'm going to click on animal husbandry. It says here, yes, 10 turns. Now, before we research that, research works in the same way that production does. It takes X amount of turns to produce it, and that is based on the level of research that you output. Your research, it's your science per turn, is shown here up in the left hand corner. Now we're getting 2.5 per turn from Munich. This science is the total science across production across all of your cities. So right now we obviously only have one city, so the only one shown there is Munich. But when you have all your cities, and sometimes you end up placing a city that is specific for science, maybe one or two of them, and then you look up here and they'll be the ones that giving you your big chunk. The reason why you don't make all your cities science cities is you can specialize every city, and you'll maybe make some cities production cities, and they're the ones that produce your units and your best buildings, maybe even wonders. Your science cities obviously go towards your research. You can have culture cities if you're going for that kind of victory, but again, we'll get into those in greater detail in due course. Last thing I would say before we end this first turn is when you're out exploring, and again, as I say, I'd set this warrior to go out, and I'm going to do a big circle here. I've just seen you will come across these, and these are tribal villages, and what these are is they will give you special resources if you are the first person to discover them. So as soon as you see them, make a beeline for them with your units. We'll see next turn what it gives me, but it'll give me something nice. Other than that, I think we're ready to hit next turn. Last thing, no, we'll hit next turn and we'll discuss that after. So, hit next turn, there'll be a brief please wait moment, and while the other civs take their turns, so that we can't see any of them yet, and we're on to the next turn. Now, if we look at this, if we look at the population and the production, it has reset now that I've skipped turn. So population growth went down to 4 turns, and the scout has went up to 9 turns. So that has changed, but again, as I said earlier, you want it growing quicker, and then it'll get production quicker. So if I go for this tribal village here, what have I got? It'll pop up saying, so they've hidden shared a hidden technical secret. Okay, your knowledge of writing has advanced considerably. Okay, what this has done, this has boosted our research. So if you look at these, okay, none of those. If you look at this, astrology is the only one we can actually, or sailing as well. This wee thing down here at the bottom of astrology, find a natural wonder, and this one on sailing, find a city on the coast. If you do these things, it'll give you about 1/3 of your science towards that. So instead of astrology, if we find a natural wonder, instead of astrology taking 20 turns, if we were to research it now, it would take, something like 12 or 13 turns. And so therefore those are things you should always go for if you can. Now not all of them will be obtainable, but a lot of the earlier ones will. What we just got is the boost for, they're called boosts, so the boost for, technology boost for writing. So if you open a technology tree, you don't want to melt your brain too much with this, but if we roll forward to, where's writing? There's writing, so it's saying here boosted, meet another civilization, right, okay. So we got boosted from the tribal village. So when we come to research that, instead of it taking 20 turns like all of these ones that are on the same level as it, it actually only takes 13 turns. which is pretty handy. Now, this is the technology tree. You can scroll forward to see all the technologies in the game, but right now we'll just focus on the early ones that we can do. So that's us doing animal husbandry, as I say, and then this will unlock, once we do animal husbandry, this will unlock further ones that it's linked to here. So it'll unlock archery there, for example, but chances are we'll probably do mining after animal husbandry because we need them both for upgrading our city. Now, other than that, yeah, the city output. So I've discussed about production, and we changed those citizen tiles to reduce the production temporarily to increase growth. If you look down here in the city screen, so let's look at the overall stats. Oh, sorry, down here in the right hand corner, you can see the different stats of the city. So down here we've got our 5 food. Alright, so that's growing. We've got our 3 production. 3 production is alright, but as I say, that'll increase the more we grow. Right now we're focusing on food. Instead of going in and messing about with the citizens, I like a lot of micromanaging, but as we get further into the game and you've lots and lots of cities, you don't quite have the time to do what I'm spending time doing now for Munich because it's our only city. You can set the computer to pick what you want the city to focus on. So if you click down here, focus in cities on food. You could hit it a second time, says citizens ignoring food. Obviously we don't want that now. You could also focus it on production. You can focus on science. Those are the 3 things I've touched on now. But you can also have your city focusing on culture. You can have your city focusing on religion or faith, and your city focusing on gold. So there's 6 different things. Ultimately, your capital will focus on a lot of them because early on you need to be getting a decent bit of them, but ultimately a decent bit of each of them. But ultimately, you will probably specialize in your capital. Often it's a very good production output city, because it tends to start in a really good location with all these luxury resources around it and strategic resources. It's one thing I didn't mention earlier. These resources there are differences in them. Some are just bonus resources, and that's just a place that you can upgrade, as I said earlier, and you get a better yield from the tile because you've upgraded it. But some of these other ones are luxury resources, and what like amber here has luxury resource, and spice is luxury resource. What they also do is they increase the happiness of your city and a couple of your other cities. I think the maximum is 4 for a lot of them. They'll increase the happiness of 4 cities, and then after that you need to get other luxury resources to increase the happiness of the rest of your cities. What happiness will do is it will help with your growth. So if you look here, this is the citizens page, and it's showing here food per turn +5. Your citizens are eating 2 food. And we need 12 food to grow the population into the next level. So that's, if you work that out, we're getting +3 per turn. Then that's why it's going to take 4 turns then for us, because we need 12. It's going to take 4 turns to get us up into the next tier of population. Now, if we change these citizens, that would reduce that surplus to, if we went back to that tile, it would reduce that surplus just to 2 surplus, and then it would actually take 6 turns to grow. So obviously the quicker we grow, the better, particularly in the early game. Now what this does is once you actually level up, then your food consumption will also increase. So once we level up in 4 turns, we'll show this, but your food consumption will increase to -3. So all of a sudden your surplus will be only +2, and then you'll get up to population 3, your surplus will only be +1, and ultimately it'll stagnate if our food stayed the same as it was. But of course, with all those extra citizens, we get extra citizens to work extra tiles, and therefore we increase our food income. Other than that, we've done the first turn. I'm trying to keep these videos relatively short and succinct for people, so I'm gonna leave it there for this first one. The next video will continue on from this page, from this exact game, but for now I think 24 minutes is enough for the first video. So thank you for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe if you've liked what you've seen. If you have any comments to make, feel free to make a comment below, and if you've If you have any ideas for other games you'd like me to cover, you can give me a shout in the comments below as well. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.